Hey everyone, it's Connor. If you like what you hear on the podcast today, be sure to check out toplevelsports.net for all my sports analysis. Thanks and enjoy the show. Welcome to the Top Level Sports Podcast. After 6 weeks of formalities, we finally reached the NBA Finals, where for the third straight year, the Golden State Warriors will face the Cleveland Cavaliers. I'm your host, Connor Groel, and here with me today to break down the NBA Finals and more are Shray Mittal.
That would be me.
And Michael Lyon.
Happy to be here.
All right, welcome to the show, Shray. Welcome back, Michael. It hasn't exactly been a great playoff so far, but hopefully that is about to change.
I would agree, and also I just want to say that I think all of us have been looking forward to a Cavaliers-Warriors rematch, probably since last finals, really. They've been great series, both the first 2015 finals and 2016 finals, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how this one unfolds.
It's been heavily anticipated, and let's see if the Cavaliers are up for the challenge.
Yeah, definitely. These teams have been steamrolling their way through the NBA playoffs so far. Warriors became the first team to ever win their first 12 games in a playoff, sweeping 3 series in a row to reach the NBA Finals. Cavs, pretty much the same. Their only slip-up was 1 game against the Celtics. But despite the fact that they've both been rolling, the Warriors enter the NBA Finals as big favorites. Anywhere between 2-1 and 3-1 is pretty much what I've been seeing on Vegas and around the internet. So the Warriors coming in as favorites, what do they have to do? What are some of the keys for the Warriors if they want to win their second title in 3 years?
They're gonna have to get off on the fast break. That's when they thrive the best. Shooting threes, moving the ball down the floor. They're gonna have to shoot well. They rely heavily on 3-point shooting, as do the Cavaliers, though. But the Warriors especially have been all year. They have shooters, Klay Thompson, Steph Curry. That's what they do. Fast break.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, in my opinion, it's always about the 3-point shot, right? How well do you stop the other guys from making threes, and how well do you make your own threes? What's the quality of looks you're getting? The Warriors are probably the best team at making hard threes, with Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson. Those are probably the 3 best shooters in the league right there. And so I think it's more going to be about how they're slowing down what the Cavaliers do. Yeah. Because any team led by LeBron James, surrounded by shooters, is going to be extremely dangerous offensively. So I think limiting that passing, limiting what LeBron James does is probably not going to happen. But limiting what he can do for his teammates, I think, is going to be a big deal for the Warriors.
I think another key, Draymond Green is probably going to be matched up with Kevin Love. If Draymond Green can shut down Kevin Love offensively, it really limits what the Cavs can do with their team, and it kind of puts a lot of pressure on LeBron and Kyrie to step up and be like the superstars they.
Right.
But for what it's worth, they did do that last season.
Yeah, Kevin Love, he's been a beast recently in the playoffs. For me, when it comes to the Warriors, I think the Warriors, on paper, are almost so good of a team that you can't really beat the Warriors. The Warriors kind of have to beat themselves a little bit. So when I look at the Warriors, there's 3 things in common in most Warriors losses. Number 1 is they turn the ball over. The Warriors, especially when they can't get in their fast breaks, when they can't turn the other team over, and then they're losing possessions themselves. Sometimes they, can really fall apart there. Number 2 is going to be defensive rebounding. Warriors, JaVale McGee and Zaza Pachulia have done a pretty good job this year, but especially looking back at last season in the finals, especially in some of their struggles in the playoffs last year against the Thunder, the Warriors can allow a lot of offensive rebounds. So limiting Tristan Thompson's effect on the finals is going to be really important, and just making sure they crash the defensive glass to prevent extra possessions. And then lastly, like you guys have said, just shooting the ball. Just make sure you're passing it well, getting wide open looks. And the shooters just got to knock some shots down.
And moving into a key for the Cavs, I think that's a huge one. Offensive rebounding, Tristan Thompson. That's when he does have a size and height advantage over their rebounders in Golden State, Draymond Green. So I think that's a huge key for them because he's been a great offensive rebounder all year. And if they can give their team second chances offensively, that'll be a big key to winning.
Yeah. And with the Cavaliers, the Cavaliers have 2 real superstars in LeBron James and Kyrie Irving. And that's not a slight to Kevin Love, but I don't think he's been quite at the level of the other 2. So LeBron James is going to have some big games. Kyrie Irving is going to have some clutch moments and some big games. For me, for the Cavaliers, it's not really about those 2 guys because you kind of know what you're going to get. It's about getting some of the role players more involved. It's about getting Tristan Thompson some offensive rebounds and some easy looks. It's about getting Kevin Love open, having him knock down some shots. More of the role players, J.R. Smith, Kyle Korver, Channing Frye, can they come in and hit big threes to kind of keep the offense rolling so it doesn't have to be all LeBron?
And that kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about the Warriors' keys. You can't really stop what LeBron James and Kyrie Irving are going to do. They're going to drop their 25, 30 points a game. They're going to drop 10 assists a game. They're going to hit some clutch shots. They're going to make some big plays. And, I mean, you can live with that. Because if you only have two guys that are doing good on a team, and you've got a team full of talent like the Warriors do, a loaded team, it's you're going to win your games. But the most dangerous thing with LeBron is always that the passing ability, the ability to get other people involved while at the same time dominating the game yourself. It's pretty rare that a superstar can dominate both through their own production, their own scoring, and also defensively, and also getting his teammates involved. And I think shutting in the last part of that, getting the teammates involved, making sure the role players aren't hitting their shots, making sure they can't get into a good rhythm, making sure J.R. Smith doesn't have a huge impact on games. I think if they can stop that from happening, I think the Warriors are going to take the series pretty easily.
Because you can live with LeBron James going off and, being the best player on the court in pretty much every game. That's what happened in 2015. LeBron led both teams in points, rebounds, and assists, and they still lost 4-2.
But then he didn't steals and blocks too?
He's a god. He's a basketball god.
He's a really good player, obviously. But
best player we have in our game today. So moving on now, we know the keys for each team. What's really important is who's going to be able to execute, who's going to be actually able to take this series. I'll take the lead here, and before I make my prediction, I just want to say that I'm so thrilled that both teams are actually coming into the finals healthy this year, because in 2015, the Warriors had their 4-2 win, but Kyrie Irving only played in Game 1, and Kevin Love missed the entire series. So there were some things, maybe the Cavs weren't fully healthy there. Then in 2016, again, the Warriors, they start out with a 3-1 lead, but then you have a suspension to Draymond Green. You have Andrew Bogut, who is injured. You have Steph Curry, who might not have been 100%. So the Warriors, all the jokes, they blew a 3-1 lead, but they had some injury problems and some problems with players being out by their own. And then now in 2017, no suspensions, no injuries really on either side. Both teams are healthy. So this is kind of the matchup we've all been waiting for. When I think about it, last year the Warriors won 73 games, had the best regular season record of all time. And this year they decided to add an MVP to their roster. If you didn't think the Warriors could get better, well, they did. And maybe that didn't show in their regular season success, but I think it makes them almost impossible to beat in a 7-game series. Because now you have Steph Curry and Kevin Durant, like clearly two of the best 5 players in the league. You have Klay Thompson, absolute incredible sharpshooter. You have Draymond Green, defensive player of the year probably. And you still have the great role players, the Livingstons and the Iguodalas. So the question for the Cavs just becomes, how do you stop all of these players? How do you guard everybody? And I don't think they can do it. And I have a lot of respect for the Cavaliers because they're a great team. But just as I said earlier that I thought the Warriors were going to beat the Spurs in 5 games, and they even beat that in 4 games, I think the Warriors will also beat the Cavs in 5.
I'll go ahead and say that the Warriors are Vegas favorites, and they should be. On paper, they outmatch the Cavaliers. They've shown it all season. They've played better. The Cavs have shown up in the playoffs big time. The playoff LeBron everyone was talking about did show up big time. They went 12-1, absolutely dominating everyone in the East. People thought the Raptors would give them trouble. The Celtics would give them trouble. They didn't. They dominated every single series. So credit to them for that. Credit to the Warriors as well, breezing through the more difficult Western Conference. No problems against the Spurs, even though they had injuries. No problem against the Jazz or the Trailblazers. They added the second best player in the league to a 73-win team. So yeah, they're pretty good statistically. But I'm going to pick the Cavaliers in the series. I think Tristan Thompson's going to really help on the offensive glass, and I think LeBron James is going to show up because this is a huge series for the meaning of his legacy. If he wins this against the Golden State Warriors with everything that they have statistically, people are going to start putting him in the same conversation as Michael Jordan. He's going to, when he brings his second title, if he brings a second title to Cleveland, that's going to be such a big accomplishment. So the motivation for him on the back end of his prime with this great opportunity, everything is there. Their whole team is healthy. Kyrie's playing amazing, really clutch in the series against the Celtics. I just think the star players of the Cavaliers are going to show up and be clutch and win it. Cavaliers in 6.
Okay.
I mean, I agree with a lot of the points Michael made. And to some extent, if you look at playoff history and how they've performed in huge games, LeBron James and Kyrie Irving have consistently shown up. You can't really say the same about Kevin Durant and Steph Curry. Sometimes they do disappear in some of the bigger playoff games. But I think ultimately the Warriors are just a lot better than the Cavaliers. It's just the Cavaliers had issues this entire regular season, and while they did kind of flip the switch in the playoffs and they did roll through the playoffs, I still don't think they're as proven as the Warriors. I don't think they're as talented as the Warriors. And LeBron James, while he does have the motivation to win this finals, I'm not sure about the rest of the team. Is Kyrie Irving, is Kevin Love, are the role players, are they going to be giving it 150% to win this title? They won it last year. And if you look at LeBron's history, like if you look at the 2012-2013 Heat and look at 2014 Heat, I mean, I think there's a big difference in like how motivated those Heat teams looked as they progressed. LeBron James always, I mean, the only series really in the past few years that LeBron didn't show up in was the 2011 finals. And even that was so long ago now that is it really still relevant when we're analyzing how is LeBron James going to play? But my question is never about LeBron James showing up because he's gonna get his numbers. It's about, hey, can the other players match up with Steph Curry, with Kevin Durant, with Klay Thompson? And I'm not sold on that. I just think the Warriors are too stacked. I think Warriors in 5.
Right. So yeah, you're agreeing with me. Warriors in 5. Michael, the voice of dissent, as always, is going Cavs in 6. But like you said, the Warriors, sometimes Steph Curry and Kevin Durant don't have great games in the playoffs, or even in the regular season. But there's 2 things I have to say about that. First of all, sometimes they have objectively bad games and they'll still have like 25 points. Like they're just incredible players. And second of all, they don't really need to show up just because the team is so much better, is so much deeper, especially. They bring guys off the bench that really could be starting and making a lot more money anywhere else. JaVale McGee has just
he was the joke of the NBA.
He's been an amazing role player this year, and it's serving his role very well. Just doesn't play a ton of minutes, but just the effort he gives, catching lobs, blocking shots. And again, Sean Livingston, one of the quietest dudes in the NBA, but he just plays great in his role. Iguodala is fantastic. They've got other guys. Ian Clark's really shown up this year. So the thing is, the Warriors don't need everyone to be on. They just kind of need to stick to the game plan, and as long as really any one of their major guys gets it rolling, they're going to be a very hard team to beat. So, again, I'd have to agree with Shray here and go Warriors in 5. But something you brought up, Michael, is LeBron James and his legacy. So, again, let's say the Cavs win this year. They win the finals. This would give LeBron his 4th NBA championship, 2 with the Heat, 2 with the Cavs, and 8 NBA Finals appearances. That's back-to-back NBA Finals wins over the Warriors, which might be the greatest basketball team ever assembled. Earlier in the playoffs, he passed Michael Jordan for the number 1 all-time playoff scorer. I know we don't like to make the comparisons, especially because they don't play the same position, which I think makes it harder. But if LeBron does get the 4th ring, do we start saying he's on an even playing field with Michael Jordan? And if not, what will it take for him to be?
My thoughts on this are that there's kind of 2 ways to go about measuring this. There's who's the better player and who's the greater player. And I think there's a distinction to be made there. I think if you're just looking at talent and how much impact you have on the basketball court, I don't think there's any player in the history of the league that has even close to the impact LeBron James has. And I think if you want to see that, just look at what happens to his teams after he leaves. Look what happened to the Cavaliers after he left for Miami. They were like a 60, 65, 66 win team, and they were the number 1 pick in the draft next year.
Yeah.
And look at what happened after he left the Heat. They went from being, I think they were the number 1 seed that the year before he left, and then they didn't make the playoffs the next year. It's really the kind of impact he has on his teams is greater than anybody else has had in the history of the NBA.
I don't think I would argue that.
But it's at the same time, you have to take into account just winning. And I know a lot of people don't like that. A lot of people say, hey, he's the better player, and that should be all that matters. But at the end of the day, your results matter. And I don't think anybody can argue LeBron James hasn't had fantastic results, but Jordan's results were almost flawless. So, I mean, to that extent, I don't think he's ever going to be at the same level as Jordan as far as undisputed, he is the best player ever to play basketball. But I think he can solidify himself to the point where people will say he was a better player than Jordan, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. You have to, at the very least, you have to put him in the same conversation because he went to a super team in Miami to win the title, and then he went back to Cleveland and showed that he could do it without assembling. So he could do it in his hometown, even though he had the help of Kyrie Irving. He was going against, as we said, one of the best teams ever assembled in the Golden State Warriors. So I think he would have proven himself to the extent where, we would have to say he's arguably the best player to ever play the game, even more so than Jordan.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still going to say Michael Jordan's the greatest player ever. I think in terms of team contributions single-handedly, because LeBron does everything for his teams. He's expected to be the dominant scorer. He's expected to be a dominant passer. He's one of the best passers in the league. One of the best passers we've ever seen.
Probably the best passer in the league.
Yeah, one of the best passers we've ever seen. He crashes the glass, and that's just more because of like his position and his skill set. And Michael Jordan was, I think, the best scorer that's ever played. I don't think that's in too much doubt. I think Michael Jordan, especially in the playoffs, he's the most clutch player we've ever seen. He has these crazy moments, like the flu game. And there's these moments in Michael Jordan's career where you can look on and just say, like, that's, incredible.
How does anybody do that?
How does anyone do that? And I don't think LeBron really has those, like, statement moments. Because you can say...
Well, I disagree with that. I mean, if you look at something like... there's the 2012 Eastern Conference Finals game against Boston.
Okay.
That was ridiculous. That was Game 6, elimination. It was before he won his first championship. Everybody thought the Celtics would win that game. And he ended up putting up like 45 points or something like that. And this wasn't as big of a career moment from him, but you can see the highlights on YouTube still. He's had like 27 of the last 30 points for his team in a Game 5 in the Eastern Conference Finals in 2007. Like last year, he put up back-to-back 41-point games in Games 5 and 6, and a triple-double in Game 7. He has career-defining games of similar caliber to Jordan's. It's just, they're more recent, so I think kind of you start forgetting the flaws of Jordan's career, and along with being that kind of recency, hey, we see is what he's not doing, I think to some extent we've also become kind of desensitized to LeBron's greatness. Like, he put up, 26, 8, and 8 this year? And that's like, he wasn't even an MVP finalist. Yeah. We didn't even, he was never a serious...
If you want to base it, and this is a completely different argument that we're not really going to get into, but if you look at, like, pure numbers, like, I think Russell Westbrook with the triple-double has to be there, and James Harden, I think he really has to be, like, if you want to talk about impact, like, again, impact on your team, like, I think it's LeBron James. You can make the case, like, LeBron James should be the MVP every year, but... Like, if you want to look at pure, like, just, like, raw statistical numbers and their regular season performance with the fact that the Cavs, they only went 51-31. That's a big disappointment for the Cavs in itself. So you look at how their team performed, you look at, like, just based on pure stats, like, I think you could argue that he wasn't, I mean, I don't think you can argue that he was more MVP worthy in the sense of how we tend to define MVP this year than Russell and James Harden. And Kawhi Leonard, I mean, it's debatable. It's debatable. But I really like something you said about how, like, again, we kind of forget some of the flaws in Jordan's game, and we kind of criticize LeBron more. And it's like the opposite of, like, a recency bias. I think
it's a nostalgia bias.
Right. So I think in the sports world, like, in a hypothetical universe, and this is something I've wanted to write about for a while, and I might actually write about it now. If we had a player that was, like, clearly even better than Michael Jordan, I'm not really sure how that's possible, but if we had, like, a really, like, the greatest player of all time, would we call him that? Because right now, we're in a world where Michael Jordan is just, like, god of basketball and god of sports almost in general, and so it's almost, like, sacrilegious to, like, say anything wrong about Michael Jordan.
There are dozens of analysts that will you even suggest that there's any possibility that there's been a better player than Michael Jordan, they'll just completely just flat out, no way, it's not possible. Michael Jordan is flawless, the best player to ever play the game, best player that ever will play the game. And I mean, if you look at just how they've produced and how they've impacted their respective teams, the year after Jordan retired, the first retirement after the first three-peat, they lost in the Eastern Conference Finals, and their regular season record went down by 2 wins. I mean, I think it's hard to argue that LeBron James didn't have a bigger impact on his teams than Jordan did. And I think it's the impact ultimately. How much value do you deliver to your franchise, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Michael Jordan was a huge marketable personality, and he definitely brought a lot of value to the Chicago Bulls franchise. But I remember when LeBron signed with the Cavaliers, the value of the Cleveland Cavaliers went from like $500 million to like $1 billion. Just with his signing with the franchise doubled the value of the franchise. That was before they won a title. That was before they got Kevin Love. That was literally just him signing that contract. And to me, there's no other player in NBA history that could have had that kind of impact on a franchise. And
maybe not on a franchise. And I want to kind of move on, so I'll try to wrap this up a little bit. But what Michael Jordan, and I'm still on record, I think Michael Jordan's the greatest basketball player of all time. But I think a lot of that is obviously due to his basketball and for his position, what he was able to do and his clutch factor and his how he approached the game and everything is just legendary status. But I think what makes Jordan untouchable is the effect that Michael Jordan just had on growing the game of basketball. You talk about like the dream teams and him, being an ambassador for basketball, bringing people from around the world. You talk about the shoes, the Jordan shoes in itself have just brought basketball to a completely new level. So no player is really going to have the opportunity to affect basketball and grow it in the same way as Michael Jordan. Maybe a guy like Yao Ming in terms of like the Chinese audience,
or maybe Kobe Bryant could also,
or Kobe Bryant, or people like Stephon Marbury in China as well. But no player is ever going to have a bigger impact on the game of basketball than Michael Jordan. And I think that's, if you want to talk about the greatest player, some of it's off the court, and I think that's the reason Michael Jordan's really untouchable. As far as his basketball goes, I don't think he should be the immortal god that some people claim him to be, but I still do think he's the greatest player of all time.
Okay, and that's fair enough.
Yeah. So moving on, again, we're talking about the Warriors, how 73 win team, and then they bring on an MVP. And again, we're going to stick with the Jordan comparisons. I didn't really want to do this, but we will touch on it a little bit. The 95-96 Bulls, a lot of people say they're the greatest team, the greatest basketball team, the 72-10 regular season. The Warriors had the 73-9 regular season last year, but they weren't able to win the title. So a lot of people still say the best team is the 95-96 Bulls. If the Warriors win it this year with a better team on paper than last year's team, and they even have the potential to sweep the finals. I think if they sweep the finals, in my mind, that's the greatest basketball team that's ever played this season. What do you guys think about the Warriors versus the old Bulls?
Yeah, without it, if they win this year, you have to say they're the best team. If they sweep the entire finals,
I mean, that would just be ridiculous.
Yeah, no,
I don't think it'll happen, but it's possible.
And if they do it against LeBron James and Kyrie Irving, which is like a good finals opponent. No, yeah, they have to be the best NBA team in history. If you talk about Kevin Durant, and this is a little bit different. If you talk about Kevin Durant in particular, I think his legacy was hurt a lot by going to the Warriors. He's not going to get nearly as much credit for winning this championship that the Warriors might have won otherwise, even if he didn't go to the team. If he won it in Oklahoma City, it's a lot different because that would be his team.
He does get a shot at revenge, though, over that 2012 finals against LeBron.
Yeah, he does.
He wants it.
Yeah, but I'm not sure how much the rest of the league cares about that specific rivalry.
I guess.
But my thoughts on that, they're definitely, if you just look at how good they are as a basketball team, how well they function as a basketball team, they are definitely the best team that has ever played the game. Win or lose this finals. But obviously, if you have to get the chip, you have to win the title.
Success matters.
To be in that conversation. And honestly, a lot of the reason I say the Warriors are just better is because basketball is we understand the game of basketball better today than we did 20 years ago, right?
Right, there's a lot advanced analytics and stats.
Like the most obvious one is just a 3-point shot.
And there's just so many more ways to like look at the numbers and like say, no, this is why the Warriors are the greatest team in basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I mean, the Warriors have absolutely steamrolled the playoffs so far, and to some extent, that is a huge deal, right? If they can if they go 16-0, it's not even a conversation, really. Yeah. If they can sweep the Cavaliers, I don't think there's any way you can reasonably still put that 95-96 Bulls team above this one. But yeah, I mean, they have to win their title to be in this conversation.
Yeah, I think that's something we can probably all agree on. So again, me and Shray are saying the Warriors in 5. Michael's saying the Cavs in 6. But I think here's kind of an interesting question. Put yourself in the shoes of Adam Silver, commissioner of the NBA. A lot of times we had the rigging of basketball games and the Tim Donaghy scandal in the early 2000s. That's more or less just the referees. But if you're the NBA, every year there's a kind of a result the NBA wants to happen that they think is best for exposure for the league and growth of the league. So if you're Adam Silver, what are you hoping that's going to happen in the finals? What do you think the desired outcome should be? You think it's
definitely a 7-game series. Let's just say that. Like, that's obvious.
Right.
Any series, they want to go to 7 games because that's just more money for the league. But
I guess
as far as Cavaliers or Warriors, I think having a villain is a very good thing for the league. And I think having a successful villain kind of stops making them a villain, right? Mm-hmm. And from that perspective, LeBron James is kind of seen as, hey, the good guy. He's kind of conquering this unbeatable team. And to some extent, that's a really good narrative. And also, you have on the backdrop of that primary focus, you've got LeBron James is slowly working his way up the all-time ranks to the point where, hey, maybe he's better than Jordan now.
Right, but at the same time, I think it's kind of, what makes this interesting is that you can say that both teams are kind of like the villains, because if you're looking at the perspective, the Warriors are the greatest team ever, whatever. They got Kevin Durant. That, a lot of people think that shouldn't have happened. Kevin Durant, he's, less of a player, less of a person for going to the Warriors. And LeBron James is going to try to take them down. But on the other side of the story, you have, Steph Curry, who's like an objectively great guy. And he's just, an average-looking dude that just hits threes like crazy, up against LeBron James, who jumps from team to team, assembling big threes to try to win titles. So it's kind of weird because it kind of goes both ways.
I think public perception right now is primarily in favor of the Cavaliers. I don't think you're going to find a lot of non-Warriors fans that like the Warriors, but
I think it would be better for the league if the Cavaliers win, or better for Adam Silver at least. I think the fans in general would be happier. You're right that LeBron has kind of like that hero narrative going right now against the super team. Also, if the Cavaliers win, it would help. I don't want to say it would break up the Warriors. Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, they're probably all going to want to stay and win later. But if you're talking about some of the role players, they might not want to take the pay cuts that they're taking to stay on that team if it doesn't mean a guaranteed championship. So it might hurt them in that sense and maybe get some greater competition in the years to come.
Yeah, I think I'm actually going to agree on this one. I was kind of on the fence a little bit. And I think maybe the public opinion might have been with the Warriors, maybe we'll say in 2015 in their first titles run, where it was like, oh, these guys.
Yeah, that was the honeymoon period.
They did it Splash Bros. They did it through the draft. They got Curry and Draymond and Clay, and how great they were able to assemble their team and bring everything together.
But signing Kevin Durant,
these guys were great. Perception. Yeah, I think, and maybe it was already kind of turning to that point. But especially the signing Kevin Durant, people are like, all right, maybe these guys are just too good. And maybe we just don't want to see a team that this good win. And I think the Warriors, and something we're going to talk about in a bit, I think the Warriors have a longer time span. I think the Cavaliers, can be a great team for a couple more years.
The Warriors have a huge window.
The Warriors' window of opportunity, they could conceivably win like 5 more titles. And that's not even an exaggeration.
I would agree.
So I guess it's on the Cavs side there of kind of wanting to stop the craziness, I guess, a little bit. But again, the Warriors and the Cavs, I think we can all agree that this that the Warriors and the Cavs meeting in the finals for a third year, the grudge match. That's definitely the right
The rubber
result,
match
right?
the rubber match is definitely what Adam Silver wanted, and he's very happy he got it.
I mean, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Warriors, Cavs. Anything else
Yeah.
is kind of a disappointment.
Mhm.
But does it hurt the league for like in my mind, the playoffs this year, with the exception of a couple games at the end of the Boston Wizards series were good.
There was a couple of Houston Rockets.
A couple games in the
Spurs.
Rockets Spurs series were good, but for the most part, the playoffs has just been like really terrible. So, is it good for the league to just have like these two obvious like superpowers like just storming through? Like, are both sides almost even too good that it makes the NBA boring?
I want to say yes, and I mean that might be an unpopular opinion. I don't really know. I haven't seen many articles about this subject.
Right.
I haven't heard a lot of people's opinions, but as a basketball fan, I like close games. I like close series, and I mean I'm unusual, and I don't have a strong tie to a team.
Mhm.
Most fans have a team they really like, that they really follow, and if your team is the Warriors or the Cavaliers, you're feeling great right now.
Yeah.
Right? Because you want to see your team crush people. But for everybody that's not a Warriors or Cavaliers fan, it's just kind of boring. Like, nobody wants to see, hey, these are the two best teams in the league, and everybody else is basically just tanking or trying to get draft picks or trying to get assets. And for me, the best solution to that, it's not something that's talked about enough, and it kind of goes into the whole like parity argument. How do you build more parity in the league? And I think just having a hard salary cap will do that. I think eliminating the luxury tax and just saying you cannot compete in NBA games if you have more than this much salary is a very good way to increase parity.
So that's a really good point. Because if you look at it right now, the Warriors, like Steph Curry right now is only making $12 million a year, but he's, that's about to double at least, right?
At least, yeah.
And guys at some point are going to have to get paid. So the Warriors, they don't have a crazy cap situation right now, but they're going to. And then if you look at the Cavs right now, they have guys. They're paying Tristan Thompson $15 million. They're paying J.R. Smith $12 million. They're paying LeBron James $30 million or something ridiculous. So their whole they're paying their roster is making it like I want to say it's like $130 million or something just like outrageous.
It's way above the cap.
Oh, it's way above the cap. So I'm in favor of this idea.
It's going to be hard to implement.
That's the thing. It's hard to implement, and the teams are going to hate it, right?
The teams are going to hate it, but the fans are going to love it. And when the fans love it, it increases the value of the NBA, right?
I like the hard salary cap idea as well. But I also think that in the long term, like this season especially, it was clear Cavs Warriors are the best two in the league.
Right.
But if you look at even the short-term future, these teams are going to have competition. The Warriors might have had competition this year if Kawhi Leonard and Tony Parker were healthy. The Celtics, they've kind of flopped in the series against the Cavaliers. They have a lot of talent, and they also have the first-round pick and the potential to sign a superstar.
And another potential first pick next year.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's not like we have teams that are excellent right now and improving in the future that could definitely challenge these Cavaliers and Warriors series. So I think like it right now it looks like a two-team domination thing, but even in the short-term future, I'm not convinced that that'll be the case.
So what I have to say to that is, so right now it's a two-team. It's the Warriors and the Cavaliers. And maybe you can throw short-term future. Maybe you can throw the Spurs in there because the Spurs feel like they're just going to be somewhat competitive forever. And the Celtics, they're on the rise. But I think the real problem is outside, and maybe like the Rockets or whatever. But like literally, we're living in a system where pretty much for anyone but those 5 teams, like 25 teams in the league, like as much as you don't want to say it, would be best off just trying to be as terrible as possible and just let's lose every game. Let's get the number 1 pick. Let's trade our players. Let's get as much cap salary, free up as much space as possible, and then let's just try to start from the bottom. But it's just so I want to transition. I guess I want to talk about the Celtics because we do need some teams that are going to challenge the Warriors and the Spurs, and it's just the system. The Warriors and the Cavs, because the system we're in is just the Warriors. I think the Warriors are not going to have very many problems in the foreseeable future. I think the Cavs, LeBron James will be 33 in December. He's been in the league since he was 18. At some point, believe it or not, the decline is going to happen. I don't think there's any more than like 2 years where LeBron is like a real MVP candidate, and I think LeBron's probably going to finish the second greatest player of all time. Uh, but eventually the Cavs are going to start to fall, and what's important for the NBA, I'd say the NBA needs teams in the East to step it up, because here's what I'd say: even if the Warriors miss the finals this year, hypothetically, Spurs Cavs would still be a great series, because the Spurs versus LeBron James has already happened a few times, and the Spurs are another great team to watch. The Rockets are a really fun team. The Thunder are a really fun team. Even teams like the Trailblazers are a fun team. The Jazz are improving. The Jazz look really good for the future.
Yeah, definitely.
But on the East side of things, it's just the Cavs.
And maybe the Celtics.
And like the rest of the East is not really there. And the Celtics are the only team that really feel like they're in a position to challenge. But the Celtics are in a really interesting position, mainly because they're an amazing trade with the Nets that gave them the number one pick this year. They'll have the Nets first rounder next year.
Which is probably going to be very high.
But they have Isaiah Thomas, only 1 year left on a deal. He's their superstar now, but he's 28 and he's a small point guard. So the Celtics have a lot of room and they have a lot of options. But if the Celtics want to be as competitive as possible, what is the move for them?
For the long-term future, I'm saying this as a Celtics fan, I think they have to trade Isaiah Thomas. I don't think it's in their best long-term future because he's going to demand a huge chunk of salary. He's a superstar. He's earned it. He deserves it. But for the long term, when he's like 31, 32...
Is he going to be as good? Probably
he's probably not going to be as good, and he's not going to be worth the amount of money that he's going to demand in a contract. So I think they have to unload... Because they're set for the future. They have a lot of good young role players. They have the first pick in this draft, possibly next year as well. They have the picks. They have the potential to sign a superstar small forward, maybe Gordon Hayward, Paul George, Jimmy Butler in this offseason. And I think the Celtics would be better off building around that player and maybe a draft pick.
Markelle Fultz or Lonzo Ball.
Yeah, and then getting value for IT4.
Lonzo Ball is not working out with the Celtics.
That doesn't mean they won't take him.
I think they're going to take Markelle Fultz.
I agree. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So what I think is interesting about the Isaiah Thomas decision is, and Isaiah Thomas has said he has 1 year remaining on his deal. He's not a free agent this year. He's next year. He said he's willing to play this year out on his contract, making whatever is the $10 million or so he's making next season before he signs like the mega deal or whatever, which he's trying to say, I want to be a part of Boston. And I want there to be room available so we can bring guys in this free agency so we can really, really compete for a title. The problem is, if Markelle Fultz wasn't a point guard, that'd be great. Right?
Yeah, it's an easy move. Then just draft him and let's go.
Yeah, right. Draft Markelle Fultz at, literally like any other position. I guess you prefer like a 3 or a 4. But
but even a 2 or a 5,
right.
It's not that big.
The thing is,
or a 5, I guess.
Markelle Fultz is not, like, you can throw him at the 2, but that's definitely not where he's best. And you don't want, Markelle Fultz has a chance to be one of those, all-star, incredible players, and to do it pretty quickly. So you don't want him really on the bench. So you have the number 1 pick, and you don't know what to do with it. So you could keep him, and you could try to run with Isaiah Thomas and Markelle Fultz. But then if Isaiah Thomas knows that Markelle Fultz is the future, Isaiah Thomas is going to leave in free agency. So that's the real problem for the Celtics. So you want to get value off of Isaiah Thomas. Ideally, who do you want if you're the Celtics? What is your ideal trade situation?
The ideal trade... Okay. The Celtics need to make a trade. Because with the first pick in the draft, you don't want to take a player that's replacing your best position, right? Markelle Fultz or Lonzo Ball just have way too much potential to be coming off the bench for any team. And it's not fair to them, and it's not fair to the Celtics, and not fair to Isaiah Thomas to have 2 point guards of that kind of caliber on the same team. It just doesn't make sense. But at the same time, on a top 2 loaded draft, you want to get a lot of value if you just have to trade down to 3. And I'm not sure how much value you're going to find trading. Who got the 3rd pick this year? The Suns?
The Suns are the 4. Is the 76ers actually on the 3 pick?
I'm not sure how much value you can get trading down with this 76ers.
Yeah. Like, who are the 76ers going to give you that they're willing to give that you're actually interested in?
Yeah,
there's
exactly.
no one there.
There's nobody there, and so I think the move is trading Isaiah Thomas. I mean, I'd prefer to say trade down, but there's nothing you want.
Right, that's the other option. And they're, for the record, they've said they haven't looked into doing that right now. And that's the other, you try to get some kind of value. But again, like, trade to the Suns, trade to the two things. First of all, I guess you're looking at a player like Josh Jackson from Kansas if you want to do that. But I think it's just a significant drop in value from Markelle Fultz and Lonzo Ball to kind of the rest of the field.
Yeah, definitely. It's a top 2 loaded draft.
And you're not going to get the quality you needed to be able to do that. So I guess the move is to try to get
Isaiah Thomas off the team.
Try to get Isaiah Thomas.
The thing is,
crazy.
Right now, Isaiah Thomas has an easily movable contract, and right now is probably the best player he's ever going to be. I don't think he's going to top this season. Next season, I mean, maybe that's a pessimistic outlook, but I think this was his peak. I think right now you can get a very, very good return if you trade Isaiah Thomas this year.
Yeah.
So, and when you trade a player instead of a draft pick, especially if you're not trading down with a draft pick, you've just got so many more options. You can trade with any of the 29 teams in the league trading Isaiah Thomas. But if you're trading down to the 3rd or 4th pick, you've only got 2 teams to trade with. And so I think trying to get Paul George or Jimmy Butler, trading Isaiah Thomas is the move for the Celtics. I think a really interesting trade might be trade the Nets next year pick and Isaiah Thomas for Jimmy Butler and or Paul George.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. Wow. So
then you'd have a core of Markelle Fultz or Lonzo Ball, probably Markelle Fultz,
right.
Paul George or Jimmy Butler, and Al Horford, along with
Avery Bradley
and Crowder.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great lineup, and it's a young lineup. It has a lot of room to improve, and LeBron James is going to start falling soon, and the Celtics are going to be very, very much in position to become the best team, definitely in the East, maybe in the league.
It's just so funny because you never hear a team, like normally, like when the Nuggets get rid of Carmelo Anthony, or when the Raptors get rid of, Chris Bosh left in free agency and Carmelo, but like what I'm trying to say is normally when a team gets rid of like their best player, it's for some kind of like tanking purposes. You're either you're getting great value for the future, you're freeing up cap space. You're in a position where you're saying this is not our time and we're going to try to reload for the future. The Celtics are in a unique situation where they're almost, because of how great their trade was with the Nets, they're almost forced to get rid of their best player, and doing so makes them better.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's just really weird to think about.
I don't know for sure if this is true, but I'd be pretty surprised if there's ever been a number 1 seed that had the first pick in the draft.
No.
Has there ever been one?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. And that alone is such a unique situation.
Good work, Brooklyn.
Yeah, nice job, Brooklyn. but it's such a unique situation. There's no precedent for it, right? You can't look back and say that worked for that team,
right?
And the Celtics front office has made some very good moves these last few years. They've done a very impressive job. I think they're going to make the best choices this offseason as well. We're just, honestly, we're not professionals.
No.
And
Danny Ainge has been patient. He's been smart and calculated, and I trust him to.
I trust him to maximize.
Thanks, Boston fan. No, but
I trust him to maximize the value of what they have.
So hypothetically, let's take the Celtics. Let's say next year their starting 5 is Markelle Fultz, Bradley, Paul George, and I guess Crowder and Al Horford. Do you think that's the favorite in the East?
No, not next year.
Yeah.
Not next year.
LeBron's still in the back end.
And Markelle Fultz probably isn't going to be a superstar next year.
Yeah.
But
give it 3 years.
3 years. I was going to say, what's the timetable before they're? Yeah, I think they can really start getting competitive.
They're still going to be a top 2-3 seed in the East next year for sure.
Yeah.
Trade or Isaiah Thomas, don't trade Isaiah Thomas. It'd be very hard for them not to be a top 2 or 3 seed in the East next year.
Just because, I mean, free agency players just seem to go west. It's like for the East, and this has been a thing for like a decade now. This has been a
I
thing
think the
since
Celtics are one of the most desirable teams to go to right now. If I was a player looking to win a championship right now, a good player that is, a player that wants to make money also, I'm looking at the Celtics as my first option.
Yeah.
Because I know that they're going to have a good core that's going to be able to take over the East in LeBron James' decline. I know they're playing in the weaker conference. I know that I'm going to be able to get paid there. I'm not going to get like paid with the Cavaliers or the Warriors. And I know I'm going to be a part of a huge winning tradition. I'm going to have a great coach in Brad Stevens. I'm going to have a great front office. I mean, I think there's been talk of Gordon Hayward
Gordon Hayward might
sign straight up with the Celtics.
It's possible, and that'd be ridiculous, right?
That'd be a huge deal, and then you basically just don't. I guess you don't have to trade Isaiah Thomas either.
This is exciting because it seems like ever since like the whole 2009 2010-ish period with the Lakers and the Celtics in the finals, where that was like the peak of like the Celtics big three or whatever. I feel ever since then it's just been like LeBron James dominating the East, and like you don't blink an eye. It's just what happens.
Well, actually, I want to this is kind of a little off topic, but
okay.
I think it's unfair to LeBron to imply that the East has offered no competition. I mean, if you look, really the only years that there was genuinely just no competition was this year and last year. The first 5 finals appearances, there was some competition. All of his 4 Miami Heat years, there were the Pacers and the Celtics that were in the way.
Okay, yes. But I think if you compare the Pacers or the Celtics to say like the Spurs in any of those years, I think the Spurs are better.
But the Spurs also made the finals in 2 of those years.
Okay, well then the Warriors or the Thunder or the Rockets. There are so many teams.
There are a lot of very good teams.
We haven't even mentioned the Clippers, although the Clippers find a way to blow it
every year.
Like the thing is, like if you look at the records, if you pit the interconference records for when an East team plays a West team,
the West is just better.
Over like the last 20 years, the West wins like 60% of games. And it's like ridiculous.
That's absurd.
It's
a 60% win rate over a 20-year period.
It's
insane.
And it's been a while since I looked at the numbers. I think it might be closer to like 56 or 57, but there's been for sure only one time since the turn of the century has the East won more games than the West.
Yeah. I mean, still,
and there's been 60 plus years for sure.
I still think it's misleading to imply that LeBron has walked over the East for the last 7 years, because I don't think he has. I think since he came to the Cavaliers, sure, but in his Miami Heat days, there was some pretty stiff competition.
Well, they weren't even the 1 seed.
Yeah, they weren't. How many times has LeBron been the 1 seed the last 7 years? Like maybe 3 or 4 of them.
Half of them. Yeah.
Well, okay. So here's a question. I think that's more. I don't know. What's LeBron's deal? I'm just not trying in the regular season. How does he become the greatest player of all time in the play?
Because he's just better. He's so good that he doesn't need home court advantage.
It feels like his regular season teams consistently underperform.
They do. And that is definitely kind of his plan to some extent,
I guess.
But
that's hard. That's hard for me to like actually believe. Oh, we're gonna roll this season on like 80%.
It's not rolling the season on 80%. It's not. It's actually he led the league in minutes this year, didn't he?
Yeah. Which by the way, for a 32-year-old player
with as much mileage as he has,
who's played more minutes than many more minutes than LeBron or Michael Jordan did in his career, it's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the question I want to ask again, back to hypotheticals: if LeBron James is playing in the Western Conference the last 7 years,
does he make the finals?
How many times does he make the finals?
Probably not 7 times.
Right. Let's to be fair, let's throw the Spurs in the East and the Cavs in the West. How many times have the
Spurs probably make it 7 times.
How many times does LeBron make the finals in those 7 years though? Like 3 or 4?
I think 4.
4?
4 probably.
I agree with 4.
Because he's won the championship 3 times, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's fair to say those 3 years he definitely would have made the finals. Okay. And then probably one more, and then loses.
I think he loses to the Warriors in the last couple years. Mm-hmm. There's one he probably loses at some point to the Thunder. I'm okay with saying 4. 3 or 4.
I don't think he ever loses to the Thunder. He's had Kevin Durant's number for a while.
Okay.
He loses to the Warriors.
It is something interesting to think about. How about the West? I think the Warriors are in a much better position to dominate for the years to come. The Spurs are kind of the main competition, and despite the fact that everyone's getting older, it seems like they're going to just be the main competition.
Continue to be good forever.
Talk about the Spurs picking up Chris Paul. What do you think about that?
I mean, if it happens, that's a great move for them. A great move for Chris Paul too.
Yeah.
And I think that keeps them competitive. It doesn't put them ahead of the Warriors.
And it's not even necessary. They're going to be competitive without it. And there's going to continue to be a lot of stacked teams in the East. People are talking about even like the Timberwolves, who have like
in the
Andrew
West.
Wiggins and in the West.
That's a few years away.
I mean, they still have time coming.
That's kind of interesting,
But
though.
That's true. We don't consider the Timberwolves.
Could the Timberwolves be the team that knocks off the Warriors? Are the Warriors going to be good for that long?
In
That it'll be the Timberwolves?
I mean, you said it yourself earlier this show that, hey, the Warriors have a window that's probably open for 5-6 years.
It's just funny to think about. It's like the team that's like 12th in the West, and we're like, those are the guys to look out for. they're very.
I do not think the Spurs are ever going to be a serious threat to the Warriors.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm underrating them. It's always dangerous to say, oh, the Spurs aren't a serious contender. Because as soon as you say that, they end up winning the finals. But I just don't see the Spurs being competitive for much longer.
So here's what I'm going to say. I think the Timberwolves, their plus sign, they're obnoxiously young. Like
they're like, oh, we can't drink yet.
Their four best player, like they can't be right. Like, is anyone over like 21 or 22 on those teams? Like, it's unbelievable. What I'll say about the Spurs: the Spurs are. I don't think they're ever going to beat the Warriors in a series, and here's why. They bring in LaMarcus Aldridge a couple years ago, and let's say they bring in Chris Paul this year. LaMarcus Aldridge and Chris Paul are both older than any of the Warriors' main dudes.
Yeah.
LaMarcus Aldridge, Chris Paul's 32 now. I looked this up earlier today, I believe. LaMarcus Aldridge will be 32 next month. And again, what's Curry and Durant are like 28?
And the reason for that is that players come in, they have a 4-year rookie deal, and then usually they sign a 5-year deal with their team.
Mm-hmm.
That's 9 years of a player's career, and that's usually most of their prime.
Right.
And if you're getting players after that, they're generally going to be kind of...
Yeah, and then just think of like the other players they brought in. They brought in David West for a year. They brought in Pau Gasol. They're just bringing...
They're old guys.
They don't have youth on that team, and
Kawhi Leonard's the only young
There's
player.
been some good postseason minutes they got from Simmons, this guy, Jonathan Simmons. They got DeJounte Murray. But, like, if we're being real, they're not going to be all-stars.
Yeah.
Like, so it almost feels like the Spurs... Maybe just every team in the West should just tank. Except for the Clippers, because they still think they can do it for some reason.
The Rockets shouldn't tank either.
That's true. The Rockets actually have some good future.
But
the feeling with me is that the Spurs are always going to like be trying to...
I think...
The Spurs are playing a 2-seed game. They're like, how can we be the 2-seed for as long as possible?
I agree. And to some extent... Maybe it is time. It's been 20 years. Maybe it's time for the Spurs to finally rebuild.
Maybe it's time for them to just say, oh, hold on.
Maybe it's time for the Spurs to rebuild.
Or they could sign Russell Westbrook.
That'd be fun.
That'd be
really fun.
That'd be really fun.
That'd be really fun.
Here's your ultimate revenge.
At some point...
The Western Conference Finals would be better than the Finals.
Can I just... Like, Russell Westbrook's not going anywhere, but that'd be amazing.
Yeah. Has he signed a contract with the Thunder?
He's not leaving.
Yeah,
he's not leaving.
But
he's getting the
I think
super
he signed like a
max.
3-year deal or something. Yeah.
And if he wins MVP, he's getting even more, isn't he?
It's almost it's kind of annoying just because
he did win MVP.
It's kind of annoying just because like the Celtics, like we're at the East, like the Celtics are that new exciting team, but then we're like, well, it's still Boston. They have more rings than anybody. Like historically, it's still LeBron and Boston. And in the West, it's like the Spurs are refueling, but it's still the Spurs.
And the Warriors.
Like when is it some guy? It's gonna be somebody else.
And I think in the NBA, I mean, we talk about a lot of this is luck of the draft, but to some extent, good franchises consistently win.
That's the thing. Like good franchises, like the Bulls haven't been great, but the Bulls are still like
relevant.
They still relevant. They still do their thing. Like the Lakers have been bad for like 3 years now out of like their
but they have a lot
of their
potential.
70-year history or whatever.
They have future potential.
So yeah,
and they also had a change in management when the older boss
died.
died.
Yeah. So, and the thing is, let's say the Lakers in like 3 more years are really good again. It's gonna be like, oh, the new upstart Lakers. It's gonna be like the Lakers again.
I mean, there are better run franchises in the league, and the only reason the Cavaliers are competitive right now is because LeBron James is probably the best player coach in NBA history.
You know who is not a well-run franchise?
The
The Brooklyn Nets.
You know who also is not a good well-run franchise? The New York Knicks.
Oh my god.
But New York fans are just kind of not happy with their basketball team.
Shout out to Fernando Montez. You won't get this far, but your shout out.
But
Oh man.
I mean,
I mean,
there is something to be said that good management in the NBA definitely matters a
Right.
lot.
and I think it's a lot of it's just big cities being able to bring in free agents.
But I mean, if you look
But
at big
management
cities
for
right
sure.
now,
Right.
like
Yeah, big cities right now aren't doing that great.
San
actually.
Francisco's pretty big, and it's pretty desirable for free agents.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, look at top 4 cities in the U.S. That's New York, L.A., Chicago, Houston. The only one of those 4 teams that was remotely close to a serious contender this year was Houston, and they're the smallest market out of that 4
That's a
teams.
good point.
So
That's kind of interesting. Well, the Clippers.
okay, we're not counting the Clippers. They're not relevant ever, but
I feel
they
obligated.
try to be relevant.
I feel obligated to do 10 seconds on the Clippers. Do they have a chance next year? No.
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 If they lose Chris Paul, definitely no. If they do not lose Chris Paul, probably no.
Awesome. So there you go. There's the rundown. That's NBA Finals predictions. Some stuff on the Celtics. Some stuff on the Spurs. Some stuff on the future of the league.
And some stuff with the Clippers. Don't forget that
Some
analysis.
stuff on the Clippers. Some jokes about the Nets. I think that's all we have for today. Thanks to Shray and Michael for joining me. If you enjoyed the podcast, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the YouTube channel. You can also check out the main website at toplevelsports.net and follow TLS on Facebook and Twitter. This is Connor saying thanks for watching and see you next time. Peace.